Yeah, we are live. And we'll be right back after this. I think. I think.
Maybe.
Maybe. Welcome back. Welcome back, Cheryl. Welcome back to the Lynn and
This is
Cheryl.
what you call working right up to the minute.
Hi, Cheryl. And you know what? It's perfect because I'll just do it myself. And that's what Cheryl was doing. She was doing it herself to the last minute.
I always do. That's probably why this topic, I need to be listening to somebody instead of talking about it.
So just a little backup story is she got a text and she's trying to answer it right before we started, and she's like, "Give me a minute," but she had it on voice and it was recording the what she was saying. So I was trying to give her a minute, and it's just like,
I'll tell you, Monday, it may be Wednesday on the calendar, but it's Monday in the mind. So that's what's going on here. But today, tomorrow's the last day of Mercury in retrograde, so maybe things will clear up finally.
yeah, I mean, you may not believe in that stuff, but we're finding it's more apparent than not.
Gary sat in an airport for 6 hours day before yesterday and never did get out. So, hey,
So yeah, so I like the topic today. So usually Tuesday nights I do a show with the Lynn and Scott and friends, and then usually I go ahead and send out the plans. And I guess I can always just set it up way early, but I usually set it up at night. And usually I try to talk to Cheryl, and so that's now you know the backstory of how I usually do this. I didn't get to talk to my Cheryl yesterday, so I put T to be announced. And next thing you know, I didn't. Hi, Bob. Thanks for being here. And so I just put to be announced because I wasn't going to call her at 9 o'clock at night. And then she wrote the I'll just do it myself. So here we are. We didn't get to talk about this at all.
oh, well, part of it came from one of my clients yesterday. I had one of them online and they were nicely complaining. Is that a good way to put it?
I
Uh,
love that.
about they couldn't get the employees to do anything. They just have to do it themselves. And so we had a really long conversation about that's what's wrong with us all nowadays. Instead of taking the time to teach somebody, to take the hour and a half to teach somebody how to do something, sure, we can do it in 10 minutes, maybe five. But if you have to do it 10 times, then you're overlooked. So, because he kept saying, I keep having to do it over and over and over. Well, if you would have trained them, took the time in the beginning and trained them, you wouldn't have had all those extra times. So you're paying forward when you're training somebody to do something, even if it takes a huge amount of time. But we do that in our personal lives. We do it. I mean, I have an assistant, and I'm the world's worst to stop doing something I need to do and do things that I just need to tell her or show her how to do.
It reminds me of the times that I did, and I'm bad about it. But anytime I hired somebody to come and clean, or the intention,
You didn't
well,
clean it first.
I did. I would say, "Well, I could do these dishes." I would clean before I cleaning, and when I used to do lingerie parties, I would go to the best houses and best places, and while I'm clearing up to get ready to go out of the party, I'm like, "What is she doing?" And she's like, "I'm cleaning up because my maid's coming tomorrow, and she's taking the linen and throwing it downstairs and doing all this." I'm like, she's great, but she's busting her ass to get everything organized for. So yeah, it is funny, but I mean, it takes a village to do things, I mean, you know, and I mean, for me, it was like having a housekeeper kept me accountable to keep everything clean so that she didn't have to work hard. But I don't know. I really don't know what it is, but yeah, it is funny because you're like, how long it takes for you to do something. But again, the value in knowing do what you do best, but if you have a cleaner or somebody, let them do what they do and do their best, you know? And somebody that works for you wants to do their best and do what you don't want to do. So we got to realize that you got a wheelhouse. If somebody is there to do a task, they'd be happy to do those tasks,
Mhm.
taking away from their ability to do what you want them to do. And so it's kind of a disservice to him, and it's a disservice for that employee that maybe, um, maybe he would like to have a task that he could do too, but you're not giving him that ability to make your
Well,
job easier.
and the thing about it, you're training somebody to do something. You're showing them how to do something they don't know how to do.
Right.
But they could do they would have the knowledge to do in the future for anyone else as far as it
Right.
goes. So that's where my employee was, my client was doing wrong with his employees. He would just and run, go do it. And I'm thinking, bad idea. Just
Mhm.
train them. It's once you show them, yeah, do you have to, and they complain because, well, I have to show them again. Sometimes you have to show people more than once. I mean, they're not, he grew up in this industry. We, like the industry Jerry and I are in, we've been in it for 30 years or
Right.
plus. And so we got a lot of it by osmosis. Now, this is a chimney service industry. So what happened, we got it in little bits and pieces. Now we've got guys that you want to bring in and put them on the ground running, and you trying to cram 30 years worth of stuff down their throat, and it doesn't work that way.
No, you take for granted what you already know, and then you're trying to assume that they know, and it's second nature to you. And yet, you've got to have the compassion that you forget you started once, and it really is a give and take in anything, and if you can't show that compassion to that employee, that's why you got to hire Cheryl all the time to go filter other people. So you're, you know, you gotta be flexible to not be frustrated with somebody that's learning. They're only going to be as good as you teach them.
Uh-huh. And the oxymoron, that came out well, about the whole thing, the hardest thing to teach someone new is something you know,
Yeah, because you
because
don't.
you teach it in these steps,
Mhm.
forgetting all the little to get to those particular steps. We tend to, bullet point it's whatever you're doing. We'll do this, 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 and this. Well, okay, they could do all four of those, but they don't know how to get from one to two the way you want it to. And
Well,
so,
I've been I've been in the position to train somebody lately in hospitality, and I've been teaching them to understand why you do these things, so that they understand that if there's a mistake, there's ramifications for those mistakes, so that there's a purpose. And it's cool because as I taught them, they realized, oh my goodness, what about, and I forgot this, and they realized and they learned really quick the lesson and the purpose, that if you made that mistake and what the ramifications can be, then they're like, wow, I'm glad I learned that now, because it could be really messy if somebody walks in on the wrong room or has the wrong keys, or you don't know where a person's at and different things like that. So again, you just don't tell somebody to do something without realizing the consequences if you don't do these things a certain way.
and most people teach with the how. This is how
Hmm.
you do it. But if you
But
teach
why?
how, like you were saying, you've got to tell them why. I mean, they can get the job done on the how,
Right.
but the memory will not stay intact as well as if they know the why.
Right.
And I think that's where we make that's the mistakes we make with our children too.
Hmm.
Because the answer is, I told you so. I made you. I'll make one just like you. And
Yeah.
so instead of just telling them why you do it, and
Yeah.
but it's a time factor. I know it's a time factor, but it's a useful time factor that most people do not take advantage of.
Yeah, I remember my godmother used to be sh I sh I'd put my hand on my hip and she'd always slap my hand and tell me not to do it. Well, I seen her do it once and I said, "Don't you put your hand on your hip." And she goes, "I can put my hand on the hip." I said, "Well, you don't let me do it." And she goes, "Well, when you put your hand on your hip," she goes, "you put your foot on your other you put your foot on the other foot." She goes, "And then you twist your posture." She goes, "When I put my hand on my hip, I don't do that." I go, "Oh." I go, "Well, why didn't you tell me that?" She goes, "Well, you broke your foot and you're putting too much pressure on the broken foot." I'm like, "Well, and I went, I think 10, 12 years not knowing why she did that. I was able to question her 13 years later, but it would have been easier for her to say, "Look, you're healing your leg and, I want you to heal." But I didn't understand. So, and the same thing goes when I told you I took a glass and didn't put a metal spoon in it and I put the water in. Yeah. So I'm the one that if you don't explain to me why I need to do something, I'm going to do it the way I want to and figure out the reason why, because I'm not going to be complacent and not understand why it needs to be done that way. If there's a purpose to do it that way, I'd like to know what the purpose is, because I'm not going to be a follower and think that I need to do it that way and not question myself as to why it needs to be done that way. I'm not going to be one of those bahaha sheeps.
That's like my daughter. As she was growing up, she got to 6 foot tall really quick,
Hmm.
and she was like, I was the tallest person in my graduating class, and she followed suit. She was extremely tall, and so all of her friends came down, shoulder level, and God, the boys were like down here, and so she would tend to lurch forward.
Hmm.
And so every time I walked by her and she was bent over, I'd karate chop her, not hard. I wasn't back bad, but I'd catch her right on the shoulder blades. And of course, you'd get the look. And she, no, she never understood. But as she got older and as she saw the other girls doing the same, everybody was hooped over because that's just they would walk. She finally got proud of 6 foot tall.
Aw,
I mean, her first husband was like 4 inches shorter. In fact, he was a little shorter than I am. And, but it didn't seem to bother her. And now, she's with a guy that's taller. So she's proud of her height now.
good.
She always wanted to wear the hooker shoes like we always did.
I could never walk in those things. I no, yeah, no.
Everybody had to have them, but you always
Yeah,
thought you did, and it's like she'd put them on and then she'd start slouching. I said, you can't compensate for your feet with your
yeah.
head.
I feel real short next to Bob Ward all the time. He's very tall.
My son's 6'5", so
Yeah,
when I mean, I feel short. Now I feel short. Years ago, I was the same as my daughter.
yeah,
The reason I did the karate chops because that's what my grandmother did to me.
yeah,
Because that's how she taught me to stand up. I mean,
yeah.
it
Bob's
all
6'5", and he's always scooting down for a picture with me. So
he's the same height as my son. But and maybe that instead of I'll just do it myself, maybe I did it because I did it. But
so
yeah, back to the subject. We always have the problem of letting other people do it. I mean, anything we need to do. And if you are a person that can delegate, which is not the easiest thing for most people to do, you let people do things. The hardest thing for me to do, I had a man pressure washing out here this morning. We're getting ready to restain our deck. Okay, I grew up. I could do those things. I was a lot younger then too. I don't. I guess I could do it now. I haven't tried. I finally learned how to pay people for what they do well and do what I do well. I'm learning. I haven't learned it completely, but I'm learning.
yeah. Well, and like you said, that's why there are services out there, and that's why people enjoy what they're doing. Um, and let them be prideful what they're doing. But again, it's one of the things we don't ask. we try to save money by doing all those things, but then there's so many hours in the day, right?
Mhm.
And then you're taking away from the things that you're more productive in doing.
Well, you want to hear
So,
the hard-headed person?
about Jerry?
No, this was
About
my
you?
this was my theory when I was young. And if you think I'm really bright, you're really going to go on this one. Um,
I'm
if a,
listening.
if something got broke, like a toaster or a sewing machine or a refrigerator, whatever, if it broke, I would get in with tools, take it apart, and sometimes repair it. Sometimes I had pieces left over when I got done. Okay, but and everybody, it's like, well, why don't you pay to get it done? I said, well, here's my theory. If it's broke and I fix it, I don't have to pay anybody. If it's broke and I don't fix it, it was broke anyway. So
Yeah, I
there's
do.
your
I have taken things apart. One, for curiosity. Two, if it is broke, it's broke, and just out of curiosity, if I could fix it. So, and I, whatever. I mean, I have taken things that and not felt bad if I couldn't fix it, but if I could fix it, I would fix it. I fixed microwave a couple times and thought that was cool.
and I
You
can tell you
know.
how bad it was. That 6 foot tall child of mine. The you remember the little record players that play school would put out that they
Yeah.
said was unbreakable,
Yeah.
unbreakable. My son had one for a grand total of 20 minutes before he brought it to me in peace.
Oh my gosh. You fixed it a few times, huh?
No, that garbage didn't went and bought another one. Well, I mean, he tore it up. He had pried it. You can't just unscrew it and get to it. The kid, as a little tiny child, had seen me dig into stuff so much. He had pried that thing. He pried the turntable off, and then he pried the other pieces out of it. Took a hammer and broke the pieces he couldn't get into. This was a 2.5-year-old child.
Oh my gosh.
He saw mommy too much.
I love it. I love it.
And
Oh my
yes, I
goodness.
use hammers a lot of times to fix things.
Well, any final words on the topic before we leave?
Just don't always try to do it yourself. I think it's smart to try. I really do. If it's something that you need to do the first time, but bring people in with more knowledge than you've got to do what they do well, and you go take your time and be productive at what you do.
Yeah. I think it's great to say I'll do it myself when necessary, but also realize that you don't have to do it yourself, when you have other important things to do. So it's something to ponder and think about and realize, like, you and electronics over there, sometimes, and Mercury retrograde, sometimes you look at the calendar and sometimes you say, I ain't got time for this. And it's like playing a game, right?
Well, the good or the bad. The one thing is you get older, God helps you with the decisions that you can't do
Amen.
it all the time.
Amen. I mean, just, and some things are just, life's too short to argue about certain little things. That ain't worth your health. It ain't worth your time. It's beyond you. And just, better call Mako, right? Like they said.
Yeah, your body will tell you that you are no longer capable of doing
That's right.
certain things.
Well, Cheryl, as
I'm glad.
always, I love you very much, and I'm thankful that you're here with me. And God bless you. And talk to everybody later. Bye, Cheryl.
Bye.
See ya.
You're like a